I never thought my own daughter would humiliate me in public. But at her engagement party, standing near the buffet with a small gift in my hands, Tessa turned to me and hissed, "You're not invited to my wedding. You're toxic. Get over yourself, old man." Her bridesmaids laughed. Glasses clinked. She smiled like she'd won. But I didn't flinch because 3 days earlier, I'd already signed the papers to sell the house she thought she'd inherit. Before telling you what happened next, if you are watching this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you are listening to my revenge story from. I want to know how far it has reached. She didn't realize it yet, but that one sentence set off a chain of events that would turn everything upside down. The property, the legacy, the future itself. But to understand how we reached that point, you'd have to go back 3 years, to when Marion died. 2 years ago, everything started to shift. Not suddenly, not with shouting or breakdowns. Just small things at first. Expressions, tone, the way Tessa began correcting me in front of others. I told myself it was grief. But grief doesn't roll its eyes when you talk about your wife of 38 years. Grief doesn't mutter, "You're so dramatic," when you mention funeral costs. Grief doesn't call you a burden in your own home. Tessa did. "You should think about downsizing, Dad," she said one night, standing in the pantry I had kept stocked for decades. "Honestly, this place might finally look decent when I move in." She said it like it was a joke, but the way she eyed the crown molding, it wasn't a joke. That was 6 months after Marion passed. She loved this house. Every scuff on the floor, every loose step. We picked it out back in 1989, when Tessa was just learning to walk, and we had nothing but one salary and a Sears credit card. But she didn't see history when she looked at it. She saw entitlement, ownership, like she was just waiting for the deed to slide into her hands. Whenever I tried to share a memory, she brushed it off as old man nostalgia. When I offered to help pay for part of the wedding, quietly, with no expectations, she laughed. "Relax, Dad. You'll need that money for a nursing home someday." I stayed quiet over and over again. Not because I was afraid, because I was watching, listening, keeping track. She thought my silence meant surrender. That I was fading, shrinking, ready to be boxed up with the rest of Marion's belongings. What she didn't know was that I wasn't asleep to any of it. I was planning. When you've spent 38 years running a household, caring for your wife through her final illness, and stretching paychecks to raise a family, you learn to wait. You learn to move quietly. And most of all, you learn how to be the last man standing when the dust settles. The way she treated me over the next 2 years wasn't just disrespect. It was erasure. And I documented every moment of it. The decline wasn't explosive. It was deliberate. Tessa didn't scream. She chipped away. She once borrowed my car to pick up her fiancé's mother from the airport. Didn't ask, just left a note, taking the Lexus. "Be a good sport," smiley face. When I brought it up, she stared at me like I was being unreasonable. "Dad, don't be weird. You weren't using it." That became her favorite line. You weren't using it. That justified everything in her mind. My car, my kitchen, eventually my home. She even started tossing out old family photos, ones Marion had cherished in the hallway. Said they clashed with her aesthetic. When I found them tossed in a Goodwill donation box, I confronted her. She just shrugged. "Dad, we're trying to modernize. No offense, but old baby pictures aren't exactly interior design." Then she added, "Maybe it's time to let go of all that." All that. That was my life. Before bridal shower, I offered her my grandmother's silver bracelet. Delicate, passed through 4 generations. She didn't even bother to open the box. "God, Dad, this thing is awful. No offense, but some people need to know when their taste expired." It took everything in me not to react. But I wrote it down like I wrote down everything. The next morning, she was on the phone with a friend, loud enough for me to hear. "He's just background noise. He'll be gone soon anyway." Background noise. That's what I'd become to my only child. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat in my woodworking room, stared at the bracelet, and realized she was counting the days until I died. And I was done playing the harmless old man. From then on, I stopped hoping she'd change. I stopped making excuses and began documenting everything. Every nasty comment, every selfish move, every dollar she borrowed and never repaid. Emails, screenshots, voice memos, because my next move wouldn't be petty. It would be final. What Tessa forgot was who I used to be. Long before she reduced me to just Dad, I spent 22 years managing budgets for a government department where a single misplaced decimal could tank an entire fiscal cycle. People feared the numbers. I handled them like second nature. She assumed I was weak simply because I grew quieter with age. She mistook silence for surrender. She really should have read my resume. Tessa saw me as nothing more than an old man in a chair, predictable, fading, easy to push aside. She never knew that I once worked behind closed doors where men in suits took the credit for the calculations I performed at midnight. I let them, because I didn't need applause. I needed accuracy. I needed proof. And without realizing it, Tessa was handing me that proof piece by piece, like she was building her own downfall with her bare hands. Every jab, every eye roll, every careless insult she tossed over her shoulder, she thought it was landing on soft ground. She thought age had softened me, made me slow, made me harmless. She thought wrong. The truth was simple. I wasn't collapsing. I was preparing. In my workshop cabinet, behind my tools and an old radio that barely worked, sat a binder labeled Receipts. Not metaphorically, quite literally. Inside it, I organized printed text messages, screenshots of her social media posts, recordings of voicemails, and even a smug little message from her fiancé that said, "Your dad's not actually coming to the rehearsal dinner, right?" Total buzzkill. They thought I didn't understand technology, that I still lived in the era of rotary phones and paper calendars. So I backed everything up onto a USB drive shaped like a miniature baseball. Noah had given it to me when he was 8. He thought it was adorable. Turned out, it was the perfect hiding place. No one suspects a USB disguised as a child's toy. Especially not someone who thinks their father is incompetent. Tessa once mocked me for using folders. "Dad, you should learn the cloud. Papers for people who don't trust themselves." She wasn't wrong. I didn't trust myself to ignore warning signs anymore. But more importantly, I didn't trust her. I didn't trust her motives. And I especially didn't trust her around Noah. Noah, my grandson. Marion adored him. A bright, curious child who used to build blanket forts in my living room, stacking cushions like tiny castle walls. His laughter used to echo through the house, innocent and warm. But even that changed. Subtle, at first. He became more hesitant, more watchful, like he sensed tension he couldn't name. Then one night, I overheard Tessa on the phone. Sharp, annoyed, dismissive. "Noah needs to stop spending so much time with Grandpa. He's just clinging," she said, like love from an old man was some kind of burden she needed to manage. The words hit me in a place deeper than anger. As if my affection for my own grandson was some desperate plea for relevance. As if wanting to spend time with him made me pathetic. As if she was already rehearsing the narrative she planned to use someday. He's getting old. He's needy. He's losing it. She had no idea I heard her. She had no idea what that one sentence revealed. She had no idea what it kicked into motion. Because she thought she was warning someone about me. She didn't realize she had just exposed herself. And the binder in my workshop? It wasn't even half full yet. The real evidence, the kind that would change everything, was still coming. And she had no idea what was waiting for her on the other side of it. That night, I opened Marion's old lockbox. I hadn't touched it since the funeral. Inside were letters, copies of our will, and one thin envelope labeled, "Future Clause, only if necessary." It wasn't signed, but it was dated, and written in Marion's neat handwriting. "In the event Tessa behaves without moral integrity, redirect property to Noah." My hands shook. The next day I showed it to Mr. Halden, my friend Harold's estate attorney. He read it twice and said quietly, "With a notarized affidavit and proper documentation, this amendment could stand." Suddenly, Tessa's guaranteed future wasn't so guaranteed. I didn't want revenge. I wanted protection. For myself, for Noah, for the legacy Marion and I built from nothing. And if some entitled dreams had to be flattened along the way, so be it. The day I showed that envelope to Pastor George, he didn't speak for 5 long seconds. Not out of confusion, out of understanding. His eyes didn't widen, his mouth didn't twist, he didn't gasp. He simply stood there, the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders like he'd been expecting something like this, but hoping it would never come. Then, without breaking eye contact, he gave me the name of a lawyer who didn't advertise and didn't lose. It was after Sunday service, in the quiet hallway outside Fellowship Room B, long after the choir had scattered and the coffee urns were emptied. He pulled me aside gently, as if moving me out of the flow of the world for a moment. He didn't ask questions or waste time on polite hesitation. He just looked at me, really looked, and said, "You've been carrying something. I can see it." My throat tightened. Not because of fear, but because the truth was suddenly too close to the surface. I opened my bag and handed him the manila envelope. He didn't even blink at the handwritten phrase across the front, "only if necessary," a phrase that suddenly felt heavier than the entire building around us. Pastor George unfolded the amendment like it was a fragile relic. He read it slowly, once through, then again. His fingers brushed the edge of the page, the way someone touches something sharper than it looks, weighing every word, every implication. When he finished the second read, he let out a breath that wasn't quite a sigh. More like acceptance. Then he nodded. "Then it's necessary." He refolded the paper with deliberate care, slipped it back into the envelope, and handed it to me. His eyes softened, but his voice didn't. "Don't let them mistake your kindness for powerlessness." For a moment I just stood there blinking, unsure whether it was the truth or the permission that hit harder. But I heard every word. And I carried them like armor for the rest of the day. That afternoon, Pastor sent me a name. No website. No billboard. No catchy jingle on the radio. Just an address and a phone number. Halden and Associates, back office, Suite 3C. Pastor said the man worked quietly, efficiently, and only when the situation demanded someone who played the game without flinching. The next morning, when I dialed the number, he answered on the very first ring. Halden. Come. Precise. Not a man who entertained theatrics. Exactly what I needed. I brought everything. The note. The will. The digital files. Every printed screenshot from Tessa's Instagram stories. Her throwaway insults disguised as jokes. The reels where she said boomers should be banned from weddings, adding, "including my dad," like humiliation was a cute punchline. Halden didn't flinch. He didn't frown or scold, or ask why I hadn't come earlier, all the reactions I secretly expected. He simply clicked his pen once, made a note, and said, "We'll need more. Keep collecting, especially anything recent. And watch for any sign of financial overreach." Financial overreach. He said it like a man who already knew what direction this was headed. Oh, I had signs. More than he knew. But I hadn't told him everything yet. Not the bouquet with a hidden message, not the voicemail she left in a moment of arrogance, not the quiet steps she was already taking toward the house like it already belonged to her. Because I wasn't done building. I wasn't ready to reveal the full deck. I was still collecting, the comments, the tone shifts, the patterns. Still threading the evidence together with the same steady patience I once used balancing government budgets while elected officials circled like vultures. Piece by piece. Lie by lie. I watched as Tessa's behavior shifted from irritation to entitlement to something sharper, something bordering on possession. The careless remarks, the smug criticisms, the way she spoke about the future as if she'd already claimed it. She didn't see me observing. She thought her words were drifting into the air, dying the moment they left her mouth. She didn't realize I was catching every one of them. She didn't realize I still kept the discipline of a man who once tracked millions of dollars with red pens and sleepless nights. She didn't realize how easily I could spot inconsistencies, patterns, motives, the things most people overlook because they're too emotional to see the numbers beneath the surface. But I wasn't emotional anymore. I was strategic. And while she thought I was shrinking, I was mapping. Halden flipped through the documents I'd brought, page after page, his expression unchanged, like a surgeon reviewing scans before a difficult procedure. When he finished, he tapped the envelope once. "This is a start," he said. "But keep going. People like your daughter don't stop at insults. Eventually, entitlement becomes action." He paused, eyes sharpening. "And action leaves a trail." His words settled into me like a warning and a prediction all at once. Because deep down, I already knew Tessa was heading toward a line she shouldn't cross. I just didn't know how soon she'd reach it, or how far she'd go once she did. But she was moving closer, one careless decision at a time. And the next move she made would change everything. George called that night just to check on me. We talked for 20 minutes about the choir fundraiser and said nothing about Tessa. Before she hung up, she said, "Funny thing. The strongest men I've known were the ones everyone underestimated." That night, I opened a fresh journal. First page blank. I wrote one line. "This isn't revenge. This is reclamation." I wasn't trying to destroy Tessa. I was protecting what mattered. And once I wrote down my win condition, every move after that made sense. I sat at my kitchen table that night, lights low, coffee cold. Outside, the porch light buzzed, a moth circling something it would never reach. I turned to a new page and wrote at the top, "What do I actually want? Not revenge. Not Tessa's downfall. That would have been too easy. What I wanted was precision. A victory with no gaps, no loopholes, no way for her to get back in." So, I made a list. Simple, clear, undeniable. 1. Secure my future. I wasn't going to live under the mercy of someone who once called me background noise. That meant my finances, my signature, my authority locked down tight. 2. Redirect the estate. Marion and I built this house. We repaired it with our own hands, refinished cabinets, rewired the garage ourselves. And Tessa once said she wanted to rip out the soul of this place and modernize it. She'd never get the chance. 3. Protect Noah. He was the one person who never made me feel small. Every Sunday he'd come into the kitchen asking if we could bake just one more banana bread, like it was a secret mission. He deserved better than to grow up in that smug entitlement. And now legally, he had a real chance at inheritance. If I played this right, the house could be his, under terms she couldn't touch. 4. Leave no room for manipulation. Tessa knew how to twist emotions. Cry on cue. But I'd worked with politicians, union bosses, budget-cutting mayors. I'd watched grown men cry when I found the decimal they tried to hide. She'd learned the same lesson. No lie stands up to documentation. I closed the notebook and set it beside the baseball-shaped USB. 2 objects, side by side. One meant for the court, one meant for the fire if it ever came to that. Insurance and destruction. Order and erasure. The choice would depend on what Tessa did next. With that thought lingering, I went to bed with a calm I hadn't felt in years. Not happiness. Happiness had left this house long ago. What I felt was clarity. And with clarity came something far more powerful. Control. Tessa still believed I was just her dad, some sentimental relic who didn't understand boundaries or technology or the resale value she kept hinting at. She thought age made me harmless, predictable, easy to outmaneuver. She thought she was stepping over a man who'd already faded into the background of his own life. But she didn't know that the man she thought she was stepping over had quietly picked up the board and changed every rule she was playing by. And she really didn't know what I had found next. It started the day I opened Marion's lockbox. The cedar scent hit me first, warm, familiar, like time hadn't dared touch the memories stored inside. Marion always kept it beneath the floorboard in our closet, tucked behind old shoeboxes Tessa never bothered to look through. She called it the vault. Not jokingly, not dramatically, just simply because that's what it was. Birth certificates, life insurance documents, our marriage license, notes from the years we had nothing but hope and 2 small paychecks. Everything official lived there. But that day, I found something unofficial. It was tucked behind the original will, folded neatly as if Marion intended for someone to find it, just not too soon. The page was crisp, the edges still sharp, untouched by time. A single sheet of paper. 1 sentence. No signature. But the heading stopped me cold. Amended intent. Property clause in progress. My heart stalled. I unfolded it carefully, hand steady even though everything inside me was not. I read it once. Then again. The second time, I breathed. It was her voice. Not literally, but unmistakably. The cadence, the precision, the way she used language like a scalpel. In the event of questionable moral conduct by our daughter, the home at 814 Longview shall be transferred to our grandson, Noah Reynolds, under trustee supervision. The room felt smaller, quieter, like Marion herself were standing beside me, whispering the truth I had refused to see. This wasn't a loose thought she scribbled in anger. It wasn't a draft tossed aside. Marion was meticulous. Every line she wrote carried intention. And she'd written this with the certainty of a woman who knew she might not get the chance to sign it. A woman who understood her daughter in ways I hadn't been ready to admit. She knew Tessa's trajectory. She sensed the entitlement long before I saw it as anything more than immaturity. She recognized the storm gathering while I was still hoping the clouds would break. The lockbox seemed to hum in my hands, the weight of the page heavier than everything beneath it. Marion had left this behind like a flare, something to be used only when the darkness grew too thick to navigate alone. Only if necessary. And this felt necessary. The sentence wasn't legally binding by itself. No signature, no official stamp, no witness. But intent. Intent mattered. Intent carried weight when paired with documentation. Intent whispered louder than denial when the right attorney placed it in front of the right judge. I imagined Tessa's face if she ever saw this. The disbelief. The outrage. The dawning realization that her mother, the woman she claimed adored her beyond reason, had predicted her behavior years before she acted on any of it. But this wasn't revenge. And it wasn't punishment. This was protection. Marion had always believed Noah deserved a childhood rooted in stability, gentleness, memory. She knew he carried the best parts of all of us. And she knew, God she knew, that if Tessa ever grew careless enough to weaponize her entitlement, the house should never be hers. It should go to the one person who still saw it as home, not inventory. I sat there, the paper trembling slightly between my fingers, knowing exactly what this meant. This page, this single sentence, might be the key to everything. Holden needed evidence of intent. He needed proof that my next legal steps weren't reactionary but rooted in a long-standing concern. Marion had given me that proof without even knowing the future I would be standing in. But as I held that page, another thought crept in, a darker, sharper one. If Marion had seen this coming years ago, what else had she predicted? I folded the paper carefully and placed it beside the USB, beside the notebook, beside the life Tessa didn't know she was unraveling. Because now I had something she never expected me to have. Leverage. And the next move. The one Tessa was about to make. That would decide exactly how this story ended. Or if it ended at all. There was a blank line at the bottom for a signature. She never got to it. But intent is powerful, especially when supported by evidence. I brought it to Mr. Holden the next morning, my hands trembling enough for him to notice. He studied it for less than 30 seconds and said, "If we pair this with your affidavit plus documented behavior, yes, it could hold. It's not a guarantee, but it's leverage. And in legal matters, leverage is everything." "I'll get you what you need," I told him. He nodded, calm as always. "You're already halfway there. Just keep collecting. Focus on anything financial, emotional, and especially digital. People forget how permanent the internet is." The next morning, I woke at 5:11, not from a dream, but from purpose. I brewed coffee, opened my laptop, and pulled out the binder labeled Receipts. The one Tessa thought was for coupons. I started building timelines, quotes, screenshots, context, a prosecutor's case written by a father who'd been told to get over himself. Every post, every insult, every financial breadcrumb. All of it was going in. First up, her public Instagram. "Can we normalize not inviting toxic parents to your wedding?" I said what I said. Captioned with a selfie and 2 champagne emojis. Then the emails. I found one she accidentally forwarded to me while still using my Wi-Fi. A thread between her and her maid of honor titled, "Should we just not tell him?" Inside, "I'm honestly fine if he doesn't show up. His whole vibe is depressing." His whole vibe. I gave her her stubborn streak, her humor, her life. And she reduced me to a vibe. She didn't want ruining her curated weekend. Then came the voicemail. It wasn't for me. It was meant for her friend Danny. She must have hit the wrong contact. I know he's technically paying for part of it, but honestly, it's hush money. She should be grateful we're even pretending to include him. If he pulls that vintage bracelet stunt again, I swear I'll lose it. I sat there, phone still in my hand, staring at the transcription. Grateful. Pretending. Stunt. The words looked even uglier in text than they had sounded in her voice. Tessa truly believed kindness was a bargaining chip, something she could twist, dismiss, or weaponize whenever it suited her. She thought I was trying to buy my way into my own daughter's life, like I was some unwelcome guest begging for access. And the bracelet? She meant the heirloom I'd offered her, the one for my grandmother, passed down through 4 generations, each woman trusting the next to protect it, cherish it, respect it. Tessa called it a stunt. A stunt. As if offering her a piece of our family history was some pathetic attempt to stay relevant. That's when something inside me clicked. Not snapped. Not anger. Not yet. A clean, mechanical click. Like a lock turning when the right key slides in after years of trying the wrong ones. I forwarded the audio file to Mr. Holden, along with the voicemail metadata. He replied exactly 2 hours later, his message as sharp and steady as the man himself. We are well within grounds for disinheritance. We just need one more thing, intent to control or manipulate your assets. He needed a paper trail. He didn't know I already had one. I walked to the kitchen, pulled open the second drawer, the one under the tea towels, and slid my hand to the very back. My fingers brushed a folded receipt I had tucked there weeks earlier, back when I still hoped I'd never need it. The florist invoice. $389 for an arrangement of white peonies and ranunculus, billed to my card without my permission. Attached was a note, handwritten in looping script. Thank you for not coming. Enjoy the silence. It suits you. She sent me flowers for staying away. A bouquet as a punishment. A thank you card for disappearing. You want silence, Tessa? Fine. Let's see how quiet you get when the for sale sign goes up. I pressed the receipt flat on the counter, the paper cool beneath my fingers, and felt the shift inside me complete. Marion would have seen it earlier. She always did. But now, even I couldn't deny it. Tessa wasn't just careless anymore. She was bold, reckless, overconfident. And she had no idea what I was preparing. I kept the note, slid it into the binder marked Receipts, and then picked up my phone. I dialed the realtor's number with a steadiness that surprised even me. When the agent walked into the house 2 days later, she stepped across the threshold, looked around, and said the first words with an easy certainty. Wow. Solid bones. I laughed. A real laugh. The first one in weeks. Not because it was funny, but because it felt like someone else in the world could still see the value in this place. Value that Tessa had dismissed as outdated, dusty, irrelevant. The agent didn't ask why Marion's slippers were still neatly tucked under the bed. She didn't question why Tessa's framed engagement photos had been turned face down on the shelf. She didn't ask about the half-empty mug on the nightstand or the box of Noah's old toys stacked in the corner. She just walked slowly, respectfully, letting the house speak for itself. And for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. By the time she left, I had 3 voicemails from Tessa. Not calls, voicemails. She wanted recordings. She wanted proof she was trying. She wanted something she could replay later, twist, trim, reframe. The first one was sweet, fake sweet, the kind she used on waiters or strangers she wanted something from. Hi, Dad. Just checking in. I saw a weird Zillow ping about the house. Probably a glitch. Call me. The second was calmer, more measured, rehearsed. Hey again. Noah said something about a lady taking pictures in the dining room. I'm sure everything's fine, but can you call me? Love you. The third dropped the act entirely. I don't know what you're doing, but if you're trying to scare me, it's not cute. Not cute. The words were sharp enough to cut, but not sharp enough to wound me anymore. Tessa was rattled. And for the first time in years. Her voice didn't control the room. She didn't dictate the pace. She didn't hold the power. Silence did. The silence she had told me to enjoy. The silence she believed suited me. The silence she had demanded. Now, the silence was turning on her. And she didn't even know what was coming next. Because once the photographer arrived, once the listing went live, once the sale entered the final stage, her world would tilt. Her certainty would crack. And the daughter who believed she held all the cards would finally see who had been holding the deck all along. Hey, Dad. Just saw a weird Zillow alert about the house. Let me know if that's a mistake. Hi again. Noah mentioned something about a woman taking pictures in the dining room. Everything okay? Love you. I don't know what you're doing, but if you're trying to scare me, it's not cute. Not cute. That last one made me smile. She was rattling. Just a little. I didn't respond. Not because I couldn't, but because I wanted silence to work for me. Silence is underestimated. It rattles the guilty. It exposes the cracks. It gives people just enough room to hear their own fear echo back at them. And with Tessa, silence was louder than anything I could have said. 3 days later, the photographer arrived. Quiet, polite, mid-30s, the kind of man who respected space without having to be told. He walked through the doorway with soft footsteps, camera bag over his shoulder, eyes already mapping angles and light. Mind if I take a few shots in here? He asked, gesturing toward the living room. I stepped aside. He raised his camera and the shutters clicked in steady bursts. "This room gets beautiful light," he said, almost to himself. I nodded. "It's held a lot of birthdays." He paused, then smiled like he understood more than he let on. Maybe he did. People who work with houses recognize memories even when they're invisible. That night, almost poetically timed, Tessa posted a photo from her wedding dress fitting. Her caption read, "No negative energy allowed at this fitting." The irony would have been funny if it hadn't been so predictable. While she twirled in silk and smiled at her curated reflection, she had no idea what was happening beneath her feet. Literally beneath her estate, beneath her assumptions, beneath the foundation she thought she controlled. She never even saw the shift. Not until the sign went up. For sale. Historic 3BR, 2BA, walk to parks. Black letters, whiteboard, staked in the soil she thought was hers. The same afternoon, I received a text. "Are you serious?" No punctuation. No name. That's how I knew it hit exactly where it needed to. Still, I didn't reply. Instead, I sat in the sunroom with Noah, the only person whose love hadn't been twisted, filtered, or conditional. He was on the floor building a fort out of couch cushions and string lights, humming softly as he worked. "Can we move this one to the new house, Grandpa?" he asked, adjusting a blanket roof that kept sliding. I looked at him, the one person who never made me feel like a burden, the one who hadn't weaponized my age, my grief, or my mistakes. "We'll build a brand new fort," I said. "One nobody can tear down." His eyes lit up. And in that moment, the future felt possible again. The appraisal came in 2 days later. Higher than expected. Much higher. The house I'd poured decades into, the home Marion and I had rebuilt with our own hands, had real value in the world. Not theoretical value. Not emotional value. Actual value, cold, hard, undeniable. $410,000. When I opened the envelope, the crisp paper made a sound like a final verdict being read aloud. Fresh ink. Black numbers on white. It wasn't just market value. It was validation. That same morning, Tessa texted me again. "Are you having some kind of episode?" Because apparently a man asserting his legal rights at 67 automatically meant mental decline. In her world, clarity was delusion. Strength was instability. Boundaries were emotional breakdowns. I didn't respond to that either. Instead, I forwarded the appraisal directly to Halden. At 3:17 p.m., the first official offer came in. Full cash. No inspection. The kind of offer agents love, the kind of offer sellers dream about, the kind of offer Tessa never thought would arrive because she never believed I'd follow through. She still had no idea this was real. She still thought the listing was a scare tactic, even after the photos went live. She still believed she held the upper hand, that she could guilt, shame, or manipulate her way back into control when it mattered. But paperwork doesn't care about feelings. Cash buyers don't pause for guilt trips. And real estate contracts don't bend for entitlement. The truth was simple. She'd been so busy performing for Instagram, chasing aesthetics and applause, that she never noticed the ground shifting beneath her. She never saw the consequences coming. She never imagined I'd do more than threaten. But the offer was real. The appraisal was real. The transfer was real. Every step had been documented, notarized, time-stamped. And the house she assumed would be hers, was one signature away from being removed from her future forever. I sat there at the kitchen table, the offer paperwork in front of me, the afternoon light stretching across the wood like a spotlight, illuminating everything she had ignored. My phone buzzed again. But this time, I didn't even check it. The world was moving forward whether she wanted it to or not. I picked up the pen. Signed my name. The moment the ink dried, the house no longer belonged to the man she thought she could control. It belonged to the man she underestimated. And Tessa? She was still scrolling through wedding photos when the consequences finally caught up to her. She just didn't know yet. The biggest shock was still coming. The one thing that would shatter her certainty. The one thing she had never even considered. Because the house wasn't the only thing changing hands. And she was about to find out exactly what else she had lost. A couple from Charleston, relocating. Loved the garden, the built-ins, the hardwood floors Marion and I laid by hand. "We walked in and felt like it had soul," they wrote. That's when I knew the house still had a future. Just not with her. I signed the exclusive listing contract that evening. By morning, Tessa was in full damage control mode. "Hi, Dad. I think we need to talk. If this is about the wedding invite thing, I feel like you took that way too personally." I read it while stirring soup, then deleted it. By noon. Is this a cry for help? Should I be worried? You're scaring Noah. That almost made me laugh. Noah was at the table building a spaceship out of cardboard, tongue between his teeth in the kind of quiet focus only a child could manage. "When we move, can we name the stars?" he asked, holding up a paper plate he'd drawn constellations on with a blue marker. "Yes," I told him. "We name all of them." His face lit up, bright, unfiltered, the way children glow when they believe the world will always stay kind. For a moment, I let myself believe it too. 2 days later, the couple from Charleston sent a personal letter to accompany their offer. They had just retired. They wanted to downsize, live near good schools for their grandkids. The wife wrote that she used to bake everything from scratch and hoped the old oven still worked. It did. I'd scrubbed it the night before, polishing the handle the same way Marion used to. I signed. Offer accepted. Closing date set. And just like that, the house that had held our entire history, our laughter, our grief, our fights, our reconciliations, was no longer a cage Tessa could trap me in. It was becoming freedom. A new beginning. That afternoon, Halden emailed the paperwork. "Once this clears, we'll move everything into trust. Noah will be protected. You'll retain full control until he's of age." Noah protected. Me protected. The Reynolds legacy protected. And Tessa? She still thought the entire thing was a stunt. A dramatic flex from a bitter old man she believed was too sentimental to follow through with anything permanent. But the check was coming. The deed was changing. The locks would be too. And the best part? She hadn't even bothered to check county records. She had no idea the world underneath her feet was shifting. No idea that her place in the future had already been erased with signatures and stamps she didn't even know existed. But then something arrived that shifted everything again. Something darker, something sharper, something even she couldn't spin her way out of. A mortgage application. Filed in my name. It showed up in the early morning batch of digital alerts Halden received. Fraud notifications. Bank updates. Legal flags. Most days, it was noise. But not that day. Tessa had crossed the line into criminal territory. And now we had legal grounds to cut her off completely. Halden called at 7:42 a.m. He never called early unless something was burning down. "Mr. Reynolds," he said, his voice flat, controlled. "Have you recently applied for a mortgage?" I sat up straighter in bed, heart tightening, air shifting in my lungs. "No." "Then we have an issue." That was all he needed to say. A $40,000 loan application had been submitted under my name. Same social security number. Same birthday. Even my signature. Almost. There was a tremor in the forged version of my name. A shakiness that didn't match the steady hand I had from decades of filling out government paperwork. The loop of the R was wrong. The tail of the S too long. The red flag came from an underwriter who noticed an inconsistency in my banking history. A pattern that didn't match my spending habits. The same habits I'd kept consistent for years. And thank God for that. Because Tessa hadn't just overstepped. She had forged me. Halden didn't soften his tone. "It appears she attempted to co-sign herself into a loan against the house," he said, like he was reading a weather report. But the implication beneath it was thunder. She tried to co-sign herself. Into a loan. Against my house. As if she already owned it. As if she believed the papers were a formality, the trust a threat, the appraisal a scare tactic. As if she thought she could get ahead of everything I was doing by striking first. My mouth went dry. Images flashed. The bouquet she sent, "Enjoy the silence." The texts implying I was mentally slipping. The sideways smirks. The entitled comments. The whispered assumptions that she could twist my age into incompetence. But this wasn't disrespect. This wasn't entitlement. This wasn't tension between a father and daughter. This was theft. Identity theft. Financial fraud. Elder exploitation. This was Tessa using my name, my legal existence, to finance her life. And suddenly the house sale wasn't just justified. It was necessary. Urgent. Legally protected. "Do you want to press charges?" Halden asked. The question hung in the air, heavy and cold. I didn't answer immediately. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared out the window at the backyard Tessa once mocked for being outdated. The yard Marion had loved. The yard Noah chased fireflies in. The yard Tessa believed she'd inherit without lifting a finger. I thought of Noah. His quiet smile. His cardboard spaceship. His whispered wish to name the stars. Then I said, steady and certain. File the notice of fraud. Make it official. No more loopholes. Halden didn't hesitate. By noon, the report was logged. By early afternoon, the system flag triggered. By sunset, the legal trail behind Tessa was longer than she could ever outrun. She had just committed the one act she couldn't spin. And she didn't even know what was waiting for her on the other side of that signature. Hers, pretending to be mine. Because the house wasn't the only thing slipping away. Something much bigger was about to snap. And the silence she once demanded from me? It was about to become the loudest sound in her life. My mouth went dry. I thought of the bouquet she'd sent. Enjoy the silence. I thought of her text. Are you having an episode? No. This wasn't cruelty anymore. This was theft. We had the digital application, her IP address, the typed form, and a scanned signature. My name shaky, uneven, not even close. Suddenly everything I'd been documenting wasn't just justified. It was protected by law. This crosses into criminal territory, Halden said. Financial fraud, elder abuse, identity theft. This is no longer about disinheritance. It's about liability. He asked if I wanted to press charges. I didn't answer right away. I looked out the window at the yard Tessa once said she wanted to gut and modernize. I thought of Noah, his quiet, thoughtful face, the way he still held my hand crossing the street. Then I said, file the notice of fraud. Make it official. No more loopholes. By noon, the paperwork was logged. By 3 o'clock, Tessa called, not texting, not leaving a voicemail, called. I let it ring. She tried again. I sent it to voicemail. When I finally played it, her voice was tight and syrupy. Hey, Dad. I think there's some weird bank error going on. Maybe we should talk before things, like, escalate. Escalate. I saved the voicemail and forwarded it to Halden. Then I sat in the garden and drank coffee from the mug Tessa once said was too depressing for company. It said, world's okayest dad. Marion bought that mug one Christmas. I kept it because it made her laugh, really laugh, the kind that tilted her head back and filled the whole kitchen. After she passed, I held onto it the way some men hold onto a compass. Not because it was valuable, not because it was sentimental, but because it reminded me there was a time when my daughter hadn't twisted every good thing into something sharp. That evening, after Halden told me about the forged application, I sat down at the computer and pulled up the loan provider's website. I typed slowly, deliberately, because my hands were steady and my mind was not. The timestamp told the story before the data even loaded. The application had been filed 2 days after Tessa posted a picture of herself in her wedding dress. A custom Vera Wong. Retail price, $8,200. Guess who paid for it? She didn't just disrespect me. She used my name, my identity, to pay for her gown. And that gown. It was going to cost her everything. There is a special kind of sting that comes when betrayal has an exact price tag. Betrayal is emotional. But numbers? Numbers are cold. They tell the truth without mercy. They don't have excuses or justifications or sentimental attachments. $8,200. I stared at the screen for a long time, reading the description like it was an indictment. Custom Vera Wong. Ivory silk Mikado. Side drape. Cathedral veil. Timeless. The website boasted that it was designed for women who wear it like they earned it. Then came the caption on Tessa's post. When you find the dress, you know. Hashtag blessed, hashtag paid in full. Paid in full. With whose name, Tessa? She didn't just disrespect me in public. She reached into the last protected corner of my life, my financial identity, and stamped her initials all over it. She didn't even hesitate. She didn't even hide it. She believed she was untouchable. That night, I pulled out the receipts. Literally. The florist invoice. The venue hold fee. The cake tasting deposit. All charged to my card as accidental purchases. Every time she'd given the same line. Oops, Meant to use mine. I'll Venmo you. She never did. I had let it go because it was easier than fighting, easier than arguing with a daughter who had learned how to turn every confrontation into a performance. But this forged loan. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't poor judgment. This wasn't carelessness. This was deliberate. And it was enough. Halden said the words with calm finality. We now have full legal grounds for complete disinheritance. Everything she believes is promised is gone. The house, the estate, the trust, gone. We'll finalize the transfer to Noah once closing clears, he said. From that point on, Tessa Reynolds will be legally and permanently removed from all inheritance pathways. Permanently. A beautiful word, really. I printed it out and taped it inside my notebook. Underneath it, I wrote a single line. She bought a dress. I bought her silence. The next morning, I sent her a voice message. Short, measured. There's been a small change in the estate. Let's meet after the wedding. I want to talk. No explanation. No emotion. Just the tone she always mistook for weakness. She replied within 10 minutes. Just a heart emoji. A red one. She was confident. Too confident. She thought my rebellion was temporary. She thought I was softening. She thought I missed her. She thought I still wanted a seat at the table she believed she controlled. But what she didn't know, and wouldn't know until the brunch, was simple. I didn't want a seat at the table. I built the table. And I had already sold it. She thought we were reconciling. That the wedding had thawed me out, made me nostalgic, made me vulnerable. She walked into the post-wedding brunch expecting control, expecting to steer the conversation, steer me, steer the narrative. Instead, I handed her an envelope. Inside, the truth. The fraud notice. And her final goodbye. There is power in pretending. Pretending you're still hurt. Pretending you're still waiting for an apology that will never come. Pretending you still want closeness so the other person lets their guard down. That's exactly what I did for the next 2 weeks. I let her believe we were warming up, that maybe the wedding softened me, that maybe I was sentimental again. She sent a photo from her bachelorette brunch, a group shot with sunglasses, matching robes, champagne flutes, the curated happiness she wore like armor. Caption. Wish you were here, JK. Sort of. I didn't reply. I didn't have to. The trap was already set. And she had already walked into it. Halden finalized the trust paperwork that same week. The sale closed. The funds were locked. The transfer was in progress. Every step was notarized and irreversible. Tessa had no idea the door behind her had already shut, and that she had locked it herself with every smug insult, every stolen dollar, every forged signature. But the part that struck me, the detail that lodged itself deep and refused to dislodge, wasn't the money. It wasn't the fraud. It wasn't even the audacity. It was the timing. The loan application had been filed right after her dress post. Right after the #PaidInFull caption. Right after she flaunted a gown she couldn't afford, knowing she had a father she could exploit like a bank account with no limit. She had worn that dress like a trophy. A trophy I had unintentionally purchased for her. A trophy that now sat at the center of her downfall. Because the moment the fraud notice processed, the moment the credit flag hit, the moment the underwriter's report synced with county records, her entire world shifted. The house she coveted, gone. The inheritance she counted on, gone. The trust she thought she controlled, moved to Noah's name, with me as trustee. And the most devastating part? She didn't even know she had been erased yet. Not legally. Not financially. Not emotionally. Completely. Permanently. The only thing left was the delivery of the truth. The envelope. The brunch. The moment she saw everything she thought she owned disappear in black ink and signatures. And when she opened that envelope. When she saw the words, fraud notice, and her own name in the same sentence. When she realized the dress, the wedding, the bragging, the entitlement had cost her everything. That would be the moment the silence finally broke. Not mine. Hers. Because the daughter who mocked me, the daughter who dismissed me, the daughter who tried to turn me into a background character in my own life, was about to learn who she had really been dealing with all along. And the fall she was about to take? She had built the staircase herself. One step at a time. Tessa's name was removed from everything, legally, permanently. "She's off the table," he said, signing the last form. "You can hand her the news or let the system handle it." I wanted to look her in the eye, not to gloat, but to make sure she finally understood the price of her cruelty. So I RSVP'd to the post-wedding brunch. Just one guest. No +1. Noah would stay with George for the morning. Tessa's text came instantly. "Really? You're coming? Is this like your apology?" I didn't respond. Instead of responding to her messages, I printed everything. The sale confirmation, the fraud filing, the revised estate documents listing Noah as the sole heir with me designated as trustee. Each page represented a truth she had ignored, a boundary she had crossed, a consequence she thought would never come. I stacked them neatly, hole punch perfect, and slid them into a plain manila envelope. No note. No name. No warning. The morning of the brunch, I put on the watch Marion gave me for our 20th anniversary. The one she saved up for, the one she wrapped in gold paper, the one Tessa once mocked, saying it looked like something snatched from a clearance bin. I fastened the band slowly, deliberately. It wasn't about sentimentality. It was about remembering who I used to be before my daughter decided she could rewrite me. I arrived early. Sat at the far end of the long table. Quiet. Steady. Smiling in a way that made people unsure whether to approach me or not. Perfect. Tessa arrived 30 minutes late, loud, glowing, floating through the doorway like she was still riding the high of her wedding weekend. She twirled in her dress, kissed cheeks, thanked guests, posed in front of the custom mimosa bar like she was in a magazine spread. She hadn't even broken her stride. Until she saw me. Her smile dropped half an inch. Her hand went straight to her hip. "Oh," she said. "So you're still around." I didn't move. Didn't flinch. Just reached into my bag and handed her the envelope. She blinked, thrown off by the simplicity of it. "What's this?" she asked, raising her eyebrows as if expecting a sentimental note or apology. "Something old," I said. "Something true." Then I took a slow sip of coffee and leaned back, giving the moment room to breathe, or burn. The sound of rustling paper was the only noise at the table. Forks hovered mid-air. Conversations tapered off. Even the clink of the mimosa bar seemed to fade as she tore open the flap. She pulled out the documents like it was a joke, like maybe I had written her a heartfelt letter to frame or compiled a scrapbook of her wedding moments. The smile on her face held for exactly 2 seconds. Then her eyes started moving. Left to right. Line by line. Recognition dawning like a slow, poisonous sunrise. Her smile collapsed first. Then her posture. Then the entire room seemed to tilt as the atmosphere shifted. Because what I'd brought wasn't just paperwork. It was proof. Her hand trembled as she flipped the first page. Sale confirmation. Her brows knotted. Then the fraud filing. Her breath hitched. Then the trust documents. Noah's name, bold and undeniable. My name, trustee. Her name, stricken, removed, erased. Silence fell so thick you could almost hear her heartbeat pounding through her ribs. This isn't real," she whispered, voice cracking as she scanned faster, almost frantic, like the words would rearrange themselves if she read quickly enough. She looked up at me, eyes wide, wild, searching for some hint that this was a prank, an overreaction, a misunderstanding she could charm her way out of. But I was calm. Too calm. Around us, the room watched. Guests sat frozen, unsure whether to pretend nothing was happening or pretend they didn't see everything. Even her new husband paused mid-conversation, frowning as he noticed the color draining from her face. She turned the next page. The fraud notice. The loan application. Her forged signature. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She looked at it again, as if disbelief could erase evidence. What is this?" she finally managed, louder than she intended. A few guests flinched. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The document spoke louder than I ever could. Every lie. Every jab. Every stolen dollar. Every manipulation. Every assumption. All captured. All printed. All undeniable. She flipped back and forth between pages, her fingers shaking, trying to find an escape hatch in legal text that didn't offer any. Trying to undo what she had done with nothing but sheer panic. Her voice rose another octave. "This says the house was sold." I stirred my coffee. Steady. It was full cash. Closed last week. She staggered back a half step, clutching the chair behind her. Her husband stood up slowly, eyes narrowing as he tried to read over her shoulder. A bridesmaid put down her drink, mouth hanging open. Someone whispered, "Oh my God!" But no one moved to save her. And she knew it. Tessa flipped to the next page, Noah's name again. Her jaw dropped. "This says Noah is on the deed. You put him on the deed." I didn't blink. He's the only one who treats people like they matter. That line landed harder than any accusation. Some guests looked away. Others stared. Her voice cracked. "You can't do this. This isn't even legal." But the words sounded flimsy, childish. Because deep down, she knew exactly what she had done. She knew exactly why this was happening. She knew this wasn't surprise. This was consequence. Her hand shook as she clutched the envelope like it was burning her skin. The room wasn't breathing. And she hadn't even reached the last page. Not yet. Not the part that would break everything she thought she controlled. And as she lifted that final sheet, her eyes widened. Her face strained. And the cliff she'd been building beneath her own feet finally gave way. Her eyebrows twitched. Her mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. What is this?" she said, louder than she meant to. Silence spread across the table. Forks froze. A bridesmaid paused mid-sip. "This is wrong. It says the house was sold." I stirred my coffee like we were discussing the weather. "It was full cash," I said. "Closed last week." Her face went pale, then flushed, then something in between. "You sold my house." The room shifted. People turned. Someone dropped a napkin. "No," I said. "I sold my house. The one you forged a loan application against." The second wave hit. Her husband, Jason, scrolling on his phone this whole time, slowly looked up. "Wait, what did she say?" Tessa flipped to the next page, her voice cracking. "This says trust. Noah's name is on this." She turned to me, eyes wide and frantic. "You put Noah on the deed?" I didn't blink. He's the only one in this family who treats people like they matter. That's when Jason stood up. No smile left. "Hold on. What is she talking about?" Tessa ignored him. "This is insane. This is twisted." But I saw it. The recognition. Her mind replaying the loan application, the IP address, the Vera Wong invoice. She knew exactly what this was. Still, she tried one last time. "You're not actually cutting me off. This isn't even legal." A voice behind her spoke. "It is." Mr. Halden stepped forward from the back, navy suit, folder in hand. He hadn't planned to speak, but he was prepared. The fraud notice was filed. The sale cleared. The trust is active. And as of last Friday, Tessa Reynolds has been formally and irrevocably removed from the estate. She stumbled back a step. Her mimosa glass clinked against the table as she set it down, or dropped it. Hard to tell. No one moved. No one spoke. I sipped my coffee. Still warm. "This isn't personal," I said quietly. "It's a record." The silence didn't last long. Pastor George stood like a stone pillar, reading glasses in hand. "May I see the papers?" she asked. Tessa shoved the papers away, but George didn't flinch. He simply steadied the stack, lifted the top page, and read aloud, slow, clear, deliberate. The exact part Tessa had prayed no one would ever see. Application for mortgage loan. $40,000. Filed under the name of Reynolds David. Signature inconsistent. IP address, Tessa Reynolds. It was like a match being struck in a room soaked in gasoline. Every head turned toward my daughter. Forks froze in midair. Conversations died mid-sentence. Tessa's face drained as she lunged forward, hand flying out to snatch the papers back. This isn't what it looks like." But then a voice spoke from the opposite end of the table. Soft. Steady. Unshaken. "I have something too. Claire. My neighbor for 18 years. The woman who'd brought soup the night Marion died. The woman Tessa always dismissed as nosy." She lifted her phone, thumb hovering for a split second before she pressed play. And then, Tessa's voice filled the room, dripping with contempt. He's just background noise. He'll be gone soon anyway. The air didn't just go silent, it split. Jason froze mid-breath, hand half raised over his glass. His mother stared at the tablecloth as though it could save her from embarrassment. One bridesmaid whispered, "Oh my God," like she'd just witnessed a car crash. Tessa lunged at Claire. "Delete that. You can't just—" But Jason cut her off sharply, his voice slicing through the chaos. "Tessa, did you really say that about your father?" Her face twisted, half laugh, half sob, fully panicked. "It was a joke. You don't understand. He's toxic. He's been manipulating me for years." But the room wasn't buying it. Lucinda raised her hand, and her voice, calm, resonant, the kind that could silence an entire congregation, cut across the noise. "Enough." But Tessa wasn't done. She kept talking, words spilling out too fast, too loud, too desperate. She was grasping for air that wasn't in the room anymore. Because no one was listening. Not Jason. Not his family. Not her bridesmaids. Not the neighbors. Not the friends who had once clapped at her jokes and reposted her posts like gospel. Her in-laws sat pale and stiff. Her bridesmaids stared down at their plates, no longer loyal to the performance. Jason pushed his chair back. And without a word, he stood and walked out. He didn't look at her. Didn't reach for her. Didn't pause at the door. He was gone. Just like that. And suddenly, there it was again. Silence. Not the mocking silence she sent me in a bouquet. Not the manipulative silence meant to shame me. This was real silence. The kind that follows truth when it drops heavy enough to break a room. Tessa collapsed into her chair, clutching the papers with trembling hands, holding them like she still had a claim to them when she didn't. Her eyes darted across the pages as if they might magically change. "I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke louder than any words I could ever say. Louder than her excuses. Louder than her performance. Louder than the years she dismissed, minimized, or rewrote." The brunch didn't just shift, it detonated. And social media, hungry and ruthless, wasted no time. Within hours, the photos hit Instagram. One bridesmaid posted a carousel. Mimosas, flowers, and a blurry candid of Tessa mid-scream, face twisted, hair flying, the fraud documents visible in the edge of the frame. Caption: Brunch drama. By the end of the day, the clip was everywhere. Someone seated at the next table had recorded the entire scene. The entire meltdown. The entire unraveling. Alden's calm and lawyerly tone walking through the fraud. George reading the report like scripture. Tessa lunging and shouting and then crumbling. Her husband walking out. Her friends looking away and her in-laws ashamed. Her world collapsing in real time and then her expression when she realized the room. The life she thought she owned was no longer hers. The video spread fast through all social medias. Strangers weighed in like they knew her personally. "Imagine treating your own dad like this? Over a dress?" Noah's grandpa is much better than Tessa. Actions have consequences and the audacity is generational. By morning, the audio had become a meme and her line, "He's just background noise," was being used under videos of malfunctioning appliances and barking dogs. By noon, someone slowed down the moment Jason walked away and overlaid dramatic music, and by evening, wedding blogs were discussing it. Comment sections were on fire. "Bride loses everything at post-wedding brunch" became a trending headline. People she'd never met were dissecting her entitlement and her downfall, and she couldn't outrun any of it. Not the recording. Not the documents. Not the fraud report. Not the truth. Not the consequences she thought she was immune to. Tessa's reputation wasn't just cracked. It was collapsing. And the worst part? She wasn't done falling yet. Because the most devastating document in that envelope, the one she hadn't reached yet, was still waiting for her trembling hands. And when she saw it, that would be the moment everything finally shattered. The viral title, "When the Bride Inherits Nothing." Her wedding album, which she posted just 2 days earlier, turned into a battlefield. Comments poured in. "Imagine treating your dad like this and getting caught." A says, "Toxic, but forgets fraud is worse." A Noah's grandpa of Tessa. By day 3. Tessa shut off commenting entirely. Her bridesmaids started unfollowing, quietly at first. Then publicly. One bridesmaid even posted, "Sometimes you find out who people really are. Proud to say I'm not standing with this anymore." Jason posted a single photo, A suitcase on a hotel bed. Caption. Turns out the vows were the only thing real. Tessa tried to spin it. She put up a story saying, family drama taken out of context. Please respect our privacy during this difficult time. But no one bought it. Screenshots don't need context. Her difficult time was trending. Meanwhile, I walked into choir practice that Thursday and was met with hugs. Not pity. George leaned over and whispered, funny thing about lies, they never survive sunlight. I didn't post. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. The world had already written her ending. The bride who mocked her father and lost everything, publicly. On camera. Forever archived. I didn't relish it. Not fully. But I won't pretend, I slept better that week than I had in years. But poetic justice online wasn't enough. The banks came calling. The fraud report hit her credit. And Tessa's dream life shrank to the size of a rental. By the time the brunch video made its third round on TikTok, the banks were already moving. That forged mortgage application triggered more than embarrassment, it triggered a full fraud investigation. Within days, Tessa's credit was flagged. Her $40,000 wedding loan denied. Her cards frozen. The same money she thought she'd stolen from me turned to ash in her own hands. Jason moved out the next week. The suitcase photo hadn't been just symbolic, he was gone. And with him, his paycheck, and the Vera Wang gown she bragged about online. I saw it listed on Facebook Marketplace. $900. No takers. She and Jason ended up in a small rental. Beige carpet. Peeling linoleum. No backyard to pose in. She tried to make it look chic with filters. But everyone knew. The comments didn't let her forget. From Vera Wang to ValueMart. She traded her dad's trust for a one-year lease. But the hardest blow didn't come from the internet. It came from silence. Her in-laws stopped calling. The bridesmaids who once hyped her ghosted her. Even Danny, the friend who laughed along on those phone calls, deleted every tagged photo. And Noah. He started spending more weekends at my place. Tessa never admitted anything. But I could see it, the chaos. The shame. The arguments. It wasn't a home for him anymore. He curled up on my couch, helped me water the marigolds, and fell asleep without flinching at slammed doors. Then came the voicemail. Late one night. My phone buzzed. Her voice was raw. Shaking. I know you're angry. But can we talk, please? I don't know what to do anymore. I sat there in the dark kitchen, listening to her break. My finger hovered over save. Then I hit delete. Because here's the truth. Forgiveness is not the same as access. And some doors, once shut, should stay shut. Tessa once called me background noise. Now she was learning what real silence feels like. Let me know in the comments where you have watched it from and if you liked my story. It inspires us to share more such stories with you.